I am Asian American, but I am not a virus. My name is Daisy Trung, and this is my series called I Am, But I Am Not. Journey with me as we explore the different stereotypes and misconceptions of Asian Americans that I've seen and experienced myself. With the amplification of anti-Asian sentiment during COVID-19 and the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, I will uncover and debunk those myths and share with you the inside view on the thoughts, opinions, and experiences of those within our society. So we're just going to start off with your I am, but I am not statement.
I am Asian, but I am not a model minority.
Let's just go on to introductions. Your name, your occupation, and your ethnicity.
My name is Sakura Hamada, and I am an alumni from Oregon State University. I graduated OSU 2016, and now I am a school counselor in Reynolds School District in Portland, Oregon. And my ethnicity is Japanese American, and my name means cherry blossom in Japanese.
Okay. Next, I'll ask you about your upbringing. What was growing up like? How were your parents? Your family dynamic?
Growing up, when I still lived in Japan for first 9 years of my life, it was just like, I would say there wasn't any issues. It was kind of like normal, steady life. I had a decent childhood. I had friends, whatnot. But then all of a sudden, when I just turned 9, I moved to the United States, and my parents are divorced, and so my mom remarried to a white person, and so that's why we moved to the United States kind of abruptly, I feel like. And so since then, I have been living in the United States. I first lived in Washington State, up in Bremerton, Tacoma area, up until high school. And then I moved to Oregon, like Clackamas, when I was a sophomore in high school. And then here I am. I've been Oregonian since.
What was your school life like? So did you ever feel like you didn't belong? How were your relationships with other students of color?
I guess my high school was okay because I think there was a lot of Asian American students in Clackamas High School. So was Oregon State University too, because I think there was a large variety of Asian American students. So I felt belonged in a way. But then the difference was that a lot of them are natives, like they're born in the United States. And so the difference was that like I wasn't born here. I noticed a difference between my lived experience and their lived experience. Like I'm still like attached to my roots. I'm really attached to my culture, my like Japanese background. Even though I living in the United States for 17 years, I still speak Japanese, right? All that stuff. Meanwhile, the rest of my Asian American friends and colleagues, they know the language, they could understand it, but there's this little gap between the person and I, because this person was raised in the United States and they speak perfect English. I mean, they learn English at the same time when they're learning their other language. Meanwhile, English is my second language, and so I have an accent when I speak English. So there's an obvious difference between the group and I.
About your experience with racism, did you ever experience racism while you were growing up?
Oh yeah. It took me a while actually to recognize that was a racism, but there was many times that like some kids made fun of my accent. They asked me to say the word and I say it and they just giggle behind my back, and I thought, oh, like I'm making them laugh, like I don't know what's funny, but they're giggling. My friend pulled me aside and be like, Sakura, they are making fun of the way you speak, they're making fun of your accent. And I'm like, what? But then that still hasn't clicked to me, that's racism. And also, even I grew up at OSU, there's this one classmate that kept asking me if I understand the context, if I'm following the lecture, if I know what the professor's talking about. And I'm like, girl, like this is like our 8th week. Like, of course I know what the heck is going on, but also the audacity of this person to like repeatedly ask me if I understand the content. It's like, she has this assumption about me that she thinks I don't know what is going on. She probably thought I was an international student because the way I look, my name, accent, all that stuff. And so I guess that's when I started to click that could be a form of racism and also microaggression.
I know you mentioned the model minority myth earlier. What are your thoughts on it?
Boy, model minority myth. it creates us a unfair expectations for a lot of Asian American Pacific Islanders, because it's like the society expects us to be really good at math, be able to play music really well, or just do well academically and do well in life, which is not all often the case. We are all individual. We all have our upbringing. We all have some downfalls too. We all are unique in our own ways. And so for the society to just make assumption based on like the model minority myth really puts us a lot of pressure into the academic, because like I know for myself, as a matter of fact, felt like a lot of pressure throughout my life from my parents too, but also from my teachers and my colleagues too. They're like, oh, like you're Asian, shouldn't you be good at math, or like shouldn't you be good at like test? Well, no, I'm not the best test taker. Test gives me anxiety. But I had to tackle that, and I had to face that many, many times. And I still feel like I have to face that even during my current profession. And so I don't like it.
Going back to your identity, so you identify as Japanese American, right? How would you say that your experience is different than, say, like someone who identifies as an immigrant, like somebody who immigrated here?
Similar, I guess that depends on like how long they've been in the United States. For me, like I also immigrated when I was little. Like I would say I'm first generation. I would say I moved here with my parent and my younger siblings, and so I have to assimilate myself into a new culture. You learn a new language, also like adapting to a new environment that I was never been exposed to. Like I gotta be honest, it was really, really difficult for me to be in a new country and have to learn a new language. And I couldn't even make a lot of friends because, language barrier, and also there's a cultural differences. And so I feel like in terms of like relating it to those that are immigrants, I definitely feel them. Like I feel their struggle, I feel their experiences, because it's not easy to immigrate from another country and also trying to like, adapt yourself in it, and also like finding the resources, finding the right people, and like the culture shock, of course. And also like being placed in the ELD, English language learning department, or English language department, English second language department, however the school wants to call it. But I have been placed in the ELD program for many, many years, because yes, like my English wasn't proficient enough. But even after a while, like in high school, like even though I was taking a lot of like rigorous courses, like advanced placement courses, they kind of asked me to be in ELD, or like take a test to see where my English proficiency at, and if I should be eligible for like ELD. But like heck no, like by then my English was pretty good and I was taking rigorous courses. And so I feel like for those that are immigrated from another country to also have to struggle with a similar thing, being placed in ELD for a long time, even though they don't think they may not need it. And so I feel them.
And you mentioned that your mom also immigrated here. Do you think you could speak a little bit about her experience, maybe the differences that we both had immigrating here?
Absolutely. So, like, my mom knew English before she came here, so she didn't have to learn a new language, but she definitely have to adapt a lot. Probably way more than I have, because she needs to find the right grocery stores. Who can she talk to? What resources can she refer to? And so she has to do a lot of navigating, with the new community for sure, like building that network. Because I had the network of school. Like I get to go to school, maybe make new friends. I had a teacher. My mom, on the other hand, she has to stop compression. Like she has to seek out on her own. So like that must have been really a lot difficult for her. And then including me, she has 4 kids. And so, and she's a single mother. So navigating this whole challenges kind of by herself as a single mother. And by the way, she divorced this white person that she remarried. So it must have been a lot of like difficult for her, and even as a single mother. And also society tends to be unfair and look down on the single parent household. And she's also immigrant, and English isn't her first language either. And so she had to like go through all those like stigma and stereotypes and assumptions. And so I think she's been through a lot for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So moving on to kind of addressing anti-Blackness within the Asian community. Do you remember your first experience with a Black person, or talking to your mom about a Black person?
I know I had interacted with a Black person when I first came to the United States. Like I had a similar thoughts in my head as the rest of the white people, because to me, moving into like new country, I was already like kind of like an alien. Like I didn't know, like they all look different from me. White people look different. Of course, Black people look different. They have a different skin color. They have different like hair type, all that stuff. And so like I put them as the same group, if that makes sense. The same group where like they all look different from me. I don't know if I feel belong here. They speaks a different language. And so I feel like that was my first interaction I had with Black person. Now it's not really fair for me to like group this Black person with the rest of them, but that was where my mindset went, especially because I was like assimilating to new culture, new country. And then like when I was talking to my mom about a Black person, there was definitely some like stereotypes too. And also my dad, who currently lives in Japan right now, he also has some like stereotype against Black people and saying some like racist remarks or saying something that's not true. And then, I gotta admit, I thought that was true. I believed in my parents because I was a kid and I couldn't do my own research. So I believed in them. In that way, when I was a child, I contributed to the anti-Blackness for sure, because I believed in that, stereotype and assumption about the Black people. And so, yeah.
And what are your thoughts on like the Black Lives Matter movement? Like, do you remember when you first heard about it?
I'll be honest with you. I first heard about it like last year, right? I think the whole movement like last year. I'm pretty sure like the Black Lives Matter movement has been ongoing throughout the decades. It just didn't happen last year for sure. But like last year, I'm older. I think I'm more wiser and I have more experience. And so with that whole Black Lives Matter movement, like heck yes, I fully support it. And when I see the case of George Floyd being murdered and many innocent Black lives being taken away by the police brutality, I was really shocked. I was really sad about it. And it's also made me think like, wow, like I may be a person of color, but I never have to worry about my own safety, well-being when I'm with police. Like police does give me some anxiety. Like I'm kind of scared of police too. They have this authority figure. They seem really like aggressive and rough based on my assumption about them, but I never have any thoughts in my mind that I'm gonna get killed. Like, or they could like put me in the jail or something like that. And so I guess that was like the awakening for sure, to put me in a place where I think I am privileged because I'm fairly light skinned too. And also oftentimes a lot of Asians are seen as not tough, if that makes sense, or reserved or, all that stuff. And so they don't find us intimidating or, aggressive. And so I guess that's probably why I'm privileged to feel that like I don't have to like think about the police thinking that I am the perpetrator or the aggressor or anything like that. To be honest, I never have to thought about that. And so again, like I fully support Black Lives Matter movement. It was a wake up moment of my life to feel like, wow, their experience is true. It happens. No wonder they're fighting for their lives and they're fighting for their rights. They just want to thrive. But right now, the society that we live in right now is only making them survive instead of thriving, if that makes sense. I know I'm going on tangent, but
All good, all good. I think that's a good transition to my next question, which is your thoughts on the current violence against Asian Americans, especially with the events that happened in Georgia, the shootings.
Like words can't describe how I feel about it. It's just like I read the news and it's really devastating. Like, that could have been happened to anybody. That could have been happened to one of us. Could have happened to my mom, any of my like Asian friends, family, whoever. And so that really hit me to the core. And I noticed a lot of movements going on to support Stop Asian Hate, and which is great. I'm glad that a lot of media has been covering this issue and a lot of influencers, a lot of schools, districts have been like raising their voices. However, one thing that really upsets me or my concern is that I wish they had done that way before the massacre. Like it took them one massacre to stand up and support Asian American lives. What the hell? I started to advocate for Asian American student communities back in February because there's this incident. I think 84-year-old Thai man was murdered in, I believe, California. And so that really like triggered me, sparked up my desire to advocate for our community. And so that's why I decided to push for it, sending emails to my principal, union president, doing the outreach to whoever I can, connecting with my program director from Lewis and Clark, and just, trying to network, trying to spread awareness. And I have started to do that in February. And I, although I have seen people like supporting me, there hasn't been as much unison as I have seen after the Atlanta incidents. And so I wish that they're supportive of us way before this Atlanta shooting happened, because that proves to me that, wow, it has to take the shooting incident to happen for us to stand up, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I definitely do have a mixed feeling about that incident as a whole.
Just kind of a follow-up question, what do you think of the rhetoric that has been pushed with media and the government? How do you think they have been dealing with it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think they're trying to be inclusive as possible. I know that they're trying to highlight a lot of activists and advocates, but I oftentimes see them only highlighting the celebrities, Asian American celebrities, which is good. I think, representation matters. But activists are the ones that are also doing a lot of work, doing seminars, trainings, raising their voices, or, sending out messages to school board. And so I wish they'd also put more emphasis on activists that are actually doing the real work. I'm sure the celebrities are doing as much work they can. I mean, after all, they're using their platform to spread awareness. But, celebrities are already getting enough spotlight. And so I wish the media also mentions the activists as well, and even for government too. I feel like they're kind of late in the game, to be honest with you. Like I said before, I wish they are more susceptible. They're willing to hear and listen to us way before the shooting happened. I mean, there were a lot of people being harmed, getting killed. Just a lot of elderlies were being a victim of anti-Aging hate, and I wish they took that more seriously. And then, like I said before, it took one shooting incident for government to stand in solidarity with us. I don't know about that. And I feel like that's the same as Black Lives Matter movement too. It took one person, I think, to die in unfair circumstances for everyone to unite, and even the government to stand in solidarity. Do a person have to die for us to raise awareness? I don't think so.
And how have you personally been affected by the events that have been happening?
Fortunately, I haven't had any violence towards me for over the years, but I have noticed some subtle interactions. I know that last year when the pandemic started, I noticed that some people just kind of move farther away from me. There's this subtle side look, and then just kind of giving me space. And then I get it, pandemic, we need to keep a distance of 6 feet, whatnot. But it also makes me feel oh, are you taking a step back and also give me a side look because I'm Asian, and you all probably thought that we all have coronavirus or something like that. But that's the only incident that I have. But in terms of any sort of anti-Asian hate that includes microaggression or harassment, oh yeah, I dealt with it even before the coronaviruses too. I had a kid telling me to go back to China, even though I'm not even from China, but it just blew my mind that they have the audacity to say that to me out loud. And I had some kid pulling their eyes on the sideways to do racist remarks at me. This anti-Asian hate didn't just happen because of coronavirus. It has been happening, but no one really kind of addressed it, take it seriously. I know us Asian Americans have been fighting for it, but also I know that we have been silenced quite often by a white supremacy. But now we're spotlighted, I guess. Woohoo.
And just kind of to wrap it all up, this kind of resurgence, and I don't really like that word because obviously, like you said, it's always been around. This anti-Asian racism has brought a lot of attention to racism in general. How do you think this Stop Asian Hate movement kind of intersects with Anti-Blackness and Black Lives Matter?
I think intersects in a way that we all have to be standing solidarity with each other. We all have to have each other's back. We all have to support each other. We all have to advocate for each other. As Asian Americans, we need to stand up for Black Lives Matter. We need to support our fellow Black and brown colleagues because they're going through as much or perhaps more than we have been. Black and brown folks should also advocate and support us as well. And so the support has to be on a mutual ground. There's definitely some intersectionality there too. And I know that a lot of schools in the district too, they have been doing a lot of like anti-racist, anti-biased work at a school, trying to like advocate for Black lives and, trying to provide that safe space for a lot of students and families. But I also think that Asian Americans should also be part of the conversation about race and equity and social justice too. I mean, just because we're a quote model minority doesn't mean that we never once had experienced racism or microaggression from others. And so like we also need to be included into that conversation. And of course, like we need to continue to support the rest of our BIPOC communities, not just Black lives too, but also Native Americans, Indigenous people, our Hispanic, Mexican, Latinx friends and families. And so the list goes on and on, if that makes sense. And so we all just have to stand in solidarity to stand up against the white supremacy. We're gonna fight. I don't know if that answers the question, but
I mean, I think you addressed it for sure. You're kind of in like the education realm. What can you kind of speak to that education is like either adding or like not helping with the situation?
I think we're all trying our best to address this, either like creating an affinity group specific for BIPOC communities or like even Asian Americans too, which like however the facilitator is comfortable with. They're definitely doing a lot of book studies or professional development in terms of how to support Black and Brown kids, how do we incorporate culturally sensitive curriculums, and how to make sure that all the students are heard and valued in our school community. And so I think they're trying to add more, trying to be helpful in that point. However, though, and oftentimes a lot of educators and educator leaders are white people, white male, white female. And so sometimes I feel like they all think that they know what's best for us, for the BIPOC community. And they trying to implement something without really consulting with us or without really asking us if that's fair, or if that's okay, if that makes us uncomfortable, anything like that. And they're trying to push for it. Although the intent is good, I think the impact is what's important because, they could be doing something nice for us, but we might perceive it negatively, be like, wow, like what the heck was that? What is their problem? Why didn't they ask us, consult with us, yada, yada, yada. And so I feel like those educators and the leaders in education field needs to be aware of where they are at, like know their biases, check themselves, and know that there's so many things that they're not aware of. Like they don't have the same lived experience as we all have been. And sure, they all have been going through a lot of challenges in their life in terms of, social economics, trauma, mental health, all that stuff. And yeah, absolutely. However, in terms of racism, unfortunately, they just have not, just white supremacy. And so I think it's really important for them to like check themselves and then include the BIPOC community members, BIPOC educators, Asian American educators, Black teachers, Hispanic, Latinx educators to be part of the conversation, and even Native American Indigenous people in the conversation as well, to create more of a culturally responsive curriculum and then provide that safe space, because they can't do all this work by themselves. They need our help, and we need to also advocate, push for it, and do what we think is right for our people, for our community, but for the rest of the community.
We're coming close to our 30-minute mark, so actually we are at a 30-minute mark, but still wanted to open it up and ask if there's one thing that you want viewers to take away or remember from your interview, what would it be?
I guess continue to trust your instinct, trust your gut, because oftentimes when we're the victims of microaggression or racism or any other harassment, we tend to second guess like, oh, did this really happen? I'm not sure, maybe I'm just exaggerating, maybe I'm the only one who thinks that way, I don't want to break the peace, something like that. But what happened is the truth. Your feelings are the truth, and however you perceived it is what really happened. And so there's no need to doubt yourself. But if you feel like you need to like consult with someone about it, they should definitely do it. Find someone that you could trust, your friends, your partner, your family members, or your colleagues that you trust, to be able to like consult about the situation. And if they have your side and if they have your back, then they're able to tell you, no, so and so, what you experience is true, and you have every right to feel that way, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. And with that being said, like, just trust their instinct. And if they think what they're doing is right, just keep doing what they're doing. Like I said, I have been advocating at my school to support our Asian American Pacific Islander community. And there's been some like pushback on my end as well, but I kept pushing because like, you know what? I think this is what is needed. I trust my instinct, my professional instinct as well. And so just do what you think is right and trust your instinct.
All right, thank you.